I've talked a lot about the ceiling for Mizzou football next season, but what about the floor in 2024? Plus, Tiger basketball, you know what? I'm not so worried about Missouri's offense whatsoever long term, but the defense, that's another question at this point. So let's talk about all that and more right now on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers, join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And you know what? I want to start today with a little bit of an apology. I tried very hard this morning, in fact, to find a full South Alabama game this past season online, but I completely struck out there. Obviously, I'm trying to find more information about Corey Batoon's defense the past couple seasons. I don't want to just trust what other people are reading. I don't want to just trust the numbers. What are my eyes telling me? What kind of observations do I have to uniquely bring to the table? Well, right now, I just don't have a whole lot of them, to be perfectly honest with you. Hopefully that'll change here this week. But, well, fortunately, I have some people out there doing the real research for me. I had a commenter on YouTube, Chad Keevan, say, I dug deeper on Corey Batoon. I like the hire the more I read about him. Seems like another guy that if given the opportunity to excel, he can be great. I trust Drink's judgment. And to that point, that's where I definitely agree. Let's all trust Drink's judgment. Chad continues here. He says, we've been talking about a 10 to 12 win season next year. What do you think the bare minimum expectations should be? I think assuming no major injuries, 8-4. Thoughts? Well, I think that's a pretty fair thought there, Chad. But honestly, if you're going to use that caveat of no major injuries, I'll actually raise the floor a little bit higher than that. I think I'll go 9-3 with no major injuries because I just don't think the Missouri defense is going to regress that much, if at all. Corey Batoon or whoever was going to come in as defensive coordinator, I was going to have that thought just based on the type of personnel that Missouri has brought in. The more I hear about Chris McClellan on the inside, the Florida transfer, the more I hear about Toriano Pride at corner, the Clemson transfer, the more I think Missouri's going to be okay defensively in terms of talent next season. So again, regardless of the coordinator, I think you're telling me no major injuries. I think this offense has a chance to be even better next season. I'm expecting at least 9-3 in that scenario. And really, if it goes more disappointingly than that, I think it'll have perhaps more to do with Missouri's opponents and less to do with Missouri itself, because obviously in the Southeastern Conference, competition is at an absolute fever pitch. When you look at, say, Texas A&M on paper, a game that a lot of Missouri fans right now are just writing down as a W. And hey, it's the offseason. Fair enough. We all like to be optimistic. But being more realistic, a game in College Station, Texas, week 5 here, I believe, for Missouri. Yep, week 5. That'll be our second SEC game after playing Vanderbilt. You know, I actually think the Aggies could be better next season under Mike Elko. If everybody's talking about how Jimbo Fisher was a big part of the problem, I think their quarterback situation was an even bigger part. Now, of course, Jimbo has a massive hand in that, of course. So again, Elko, actually, year one, I think we need to get the year one ideas out of our head a little bit in the transfer portal era. The Aggies have done really, really well there, including nabbing the Big Ten sack leader, Nick Scranton, I believe, Scourton, something like that. Sorry, off the top of my head. I forget what his last name is, but again, big-time edge rusher from Purdue that Missouri was in on. Well, Texas A&M got him among several other players that they've gotten in the portal. I think they've been one of the winners of the offseason so far. Then you look at Auburn, a team that Missouri has yet to defeat in the SEC. Auburn coming to Columbia, Hugh Freeze in year number 2. Could be a more improved team. Oklahoma, hey, listen, I know Missouri fans are liking to have some fun with Oklahoma right now. We've had some wins off the field with Williams Winery and Caden Green transferring, but at the same time, it's still the Oklahoma Sooners, and if you think you can just chalk that up as a win, I think that's obviously way too much of an underestimation. And even teams like South Carolina that may have taken a little bit of a step back in year 2 under Shane Beamer, I just don't think you can just chalk all of those games up as victories. At the same time, I expect Missouri to obviously be really good once again. So to me, to answer, long way of answering Chad Keevan's question there, I think 9-3, if you're just going to assume no major injuries to your stud players like Brady Cook, Luther Burden, etc., I think 9-3 is the floor for the Tigers. Now, one of the many reasons I'm bullish on Missouri in 2024, especially on the offensive side of the ball, is the return of Marquise Johnson, the true freshman receiver. Last season, I talked over and over again about how he's not just a track guy. Although the Speedy nickname, that moniker certainly fits his style of play. At the same time, just from what I saw, I thought he had a really strong ability to track the ball in the air. You saw it over and over again, him making, in particularly, memorably, a contested catch against Kentucky on Luke Bauer's fake punt there, one of the plays not only of the season but really of all time, in my opinion, for Missouri football. Well, here's the thing. I'm about to contradict myself a little bit here because I'm one of the first people, one of the first podcasters, broadcasters, whatever you want to call me, who would tell you that you got to take the pro football focus grades with a grain of salt, without a doubt. And I absolutely believe that, especially the smaller the sample size. But at the same time, a little graphic put out by PFF here, Marquise Johnson, not only was he graded as the highest true freshman receiver in the Power 5 conferences this past season, well, he was that by a good ways, like by a significant margin, graded 90.2. Just for some context there, the only other Power 5 true freshman there, well, freshman receivers, I should say. These could be redshirt players as well, now that I'm reading this graphic a little bit more carefully. Well, there are only 2 other players that were even graded in the 80s there. Everybody else graded out 78 or below. So Marquise Johnson, really an outlier there in the Power 5 in terms of freshman receivers, and that definitely matches my eye test for sure, because a young man to me who has all the talent in the world, really, that I think he was an excellent sort of under-the-radar addition to that freshman class of 2023. And I think in 2024, all you're going to see is just him getting the ball more frequently, because I think with a whole off season, a whole season under his belt, obviously, of playing as well, but I just think this off season is going to be incredibly valuable for him in terms of not only getting chemistry with Brady Cook, but just being able to run different routes other than just, hey, the deep shots over the top. But having said that, even if that's all he does next season, once again, I think that would be a real value to Missouri and Luther Burden and Theo Weiss, allowing them to do other things, get open while he takes the top off of the defense. You obviously have to respect him. He's proven it already in one season. Well, that's going to do nothing but help Luther Burden, Theo Weiss, and the rest of that Missouri passing game. And you know what? Let's move to hoops for a little bit because obviously this season has gone awry for Missouri. But what's really important is how do we view the long-term prospects for Dennis Gates and his program? Well, quite honestly, I think the offensive side of the ball, we're going to be just fine. But defense, that's another question here. I think it's fair to start wondering about halfway through year two, maybe even a little past halfway through the halfway point here in year two for Gates. I think it's fair to start questioning the defensive principles a little bit here. But you know what? Before we get there, let's talk about eBay Motors, because passion, drive, and patience, what brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that victory. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Thanks for making Locked On Mizzou your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. That's Locked On Sports Today. And, you know, I like to be an optimistic person. I really do. It's not in my nature to be overly negative. But let's be honest, the Missouri basketball season at this point has been pretty terrible. Is that a fair word to say at this point? How about let's use an objective statement here. Since beating Wichita State on December 3rd, Missouri's gone 1-10. That one victory is against Central Arkansas all the way back on December 30th. Yeah, hasn't been pretty. Hasn't been pretty at all. 0-7 in the SEC. So far. But you know what? What's really important here, again, I could tell you, hey, Missouri's, they've still played hard. They've played close. Talk about the ultimate example of trying to put lipstick on a pig or damning somebody with faint praise, because that would certainly be it. But long term, what are the prospects here for Missouri basketball? Because I think just a few short months ago, we all thought, hey, 2 thumbs up, things are going great. Has any of that really changed? I think for the most part, the answer is no. You look at Missouri's recruiting. Obviously, this 5-man recruiting class, this high school class coming up, is hopefully going to be everything that Missouri fans expect it to be. Listen, high school recruiting, always a little bit hit and miss, just like it is with every program. But at the same time, when you are recruiting guys at the high level Missouri has, and by the way, I've seen all these guys play a little bit enough to like every single one of them. I think Peyton Marshall in particular, to me, is one of the most interesting Missouri prospects I've seen for a really long time. But everybody else, Honor Boateng, Marcus Allen, for instance, really fit, I think, what Dennis Gates and Missouri want to do in the long term. So I think talent-wise, Missouri is recruiting at an incredibly high level at this point in the Gates experience era, whatever you want to call it, and that's wildly, incredibly encouraging. I also just think if you look at offensively, what Dennis Gates has done so far. He took a team that was pretty anemic offensively in Conzo Martin's previous season and made it into one of the best and most fun teams to watch offensively in the country last season. Not only that, it was so good offensively at least, that Missouri makes the tournament, wins its first tournament game in over a decade. So to me, even this season, while Missouri is obviously taking a big step back offensively this year, I don't think it's because of the stuff that Dennis Gates runs. It's not because of the X's and O's. It's not, well, he needs to run this play instead of that play. I really, really genuinely don't think that that's it. And in fact, to me, a sign of a really good offensive coach is, what are you doing out of timeout dead ball situations? I think Missouri still does quite well, despite the fact that this is not even a top 100 offensive team nationally right now, statistically, just outside of the top 100, according to KenPom. I still think Missouri is running fairly good offense for the most part. The problem is more of the fact that, hey, a lot of times, again, like the previous game against South Carolina, the Gamecocks were really overloading the strong side of the court. There were passes to the other side of the court that were well set up that, frankly, Missouri just doesn't have the right players over there to knock down those shots. That's a talent issue. And so if it's a talent issue, go back to what I said at the beginning of this segment. I think the talent acquisition is going just fine. Again, so what is the problem, at least the worry long-term to me at this point? And now that, again, we're a year and a half into the Dennis Gates experience here, I got to be honest, I've about had it with some of his defensive principles at this point. Is Missouri ever going to stop gambling for steals this season or over-helping? Can we ever just play straight-up man-to-man half-court defense, or even at times in the zone defense that Missouri has played with relative effectiveness the past couple games at times? It's still Missouri, to me, on the perimeter, on the 2-3 zone at one point, just too much over-rotating to the ball and trying to, again, reach for steals and all that stuff at the benefit of actually just staying in front of your man and moving your feet, that kind of deal. To me, this is just me, my personal preferences defensively possibly coming into play here. It's not as though there's only one way to play defensively, but I would love to see Missouri at some point challenge guys to make one-on-one plays instead of over-helping, trapping at half court, and allowing, too often Missouri is just in scramble mode defensively, trying to play, against numbers, essentially. The offense has the numbers, and we don't. As soon as that initial trap, for example, is broken, or the initial reach for the ball that is not successful, we've seen that just time and time again. And at a certain point, it's got to be on Dennis Gates. Apparently he wants guys to do this. I don't know. Maybe eventually when he has lengthier guys in the backcourt, more athletic guys in the backcourt, that style will lend itself to better defense. But to me, play the defense that works for your team this season, because so far you're 0-7 in the SEC, and I sure as heck don't want to go winless all season. I don't know about all of you. And you know what? To be brutally honest, while I think for the most part all systems are go on the offensive side of the ball for Dennis Gates, I do think there has been one massive glaring failure there, and that's been the development of Aiden Shaw and really the regression of Aiden Shaw offensively. There was just a moment there that stuck out like a sore thumb. I think a lot of Missouri fans who watched the game saw it, and if you didn't see it, allow me to describe it for you. Shaw gets an offensive rebound with about 35 seconds left in the first half, maybe 4 seconds left on the shot clock, and he's got his back to the basket with maybe 3 or 4 feet away, and essentially at that moment there's nothing else to do other than turn around and shoot the ball. But he doesn't even look at the basket from literally 3 or 4 feet away. That was just, wow, what in the world is going on there? He's 6'9". He can jump over the backboard, quite honestly, but yet he's afraid to attempt to put the ball in the basket from there. To me, again, I've said this before and I'll say it again. I saw Aiden Shaw play in high school. He had an offensive game. He had jump shots. He could do stuff with the basketball. Why has he suddenly become like Dennis Rodman in 1998? What is going on here? He won't even look at the basket? That's just bizarre to me. So I don't know. Whatever Missouri needs to do this offseason for him to regain his confidence, let's do it, because I really thought that, and I still think that Dennis Gates understands the human part of the game and all that stuff. He understands that these guys aren't just robots and all that stuff. So that's why I'm really surprised and disappointed that Aiden Shaw's confidence really seems to be shot on that end of the court. Now, he actually took a shot from a similar spot later in the second half when he needed to, and guess what happened? He made it. He scored. So maybe that'll be the confidence breaker, the confidence gainer that he needs for the rest of the season. But Aiden Shaw, just shoot the ball. I'm not even going to be mad if you miss at this point. I just want to see you take shots that are there around the basket in particular. And with Mizzou basketball obviously leaving quite a bit to be desired, you know what? It's all aboard the gymnastics bandwagon for me. And wrestling too, of course. But you know what? I want to talk a little bit about gymnastics. Took it in this past Friday on television and had a great time, I actually too. And a little bit more football on the other side of this quick little break as well. But first, hey, let's talk about the Tigers who are going to the Super Bowl. Blaine Gabbert, Nick Bolton, also Dave Tobe, Andy Hill, Andy Reid, even lots of connections to Mizzou. But you know what? Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some Super Bowl bets. For me, it's all about the nachos, let's be real. But of course, it's about my Kansas City Chiefs as well. And FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W, or 2 or 3 even. Not only you can bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored in the game, and so much more. New customers join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. One more football comment here from a listener, Vicky Stevenson, who said, John, about no one following college football overseas. This was a comment I had made talking about, well, media rights, Netflix, NFL. I won't get too much into it, but this was a media discussion on the previous couple episodes of the program if you missed it. I believe that was on Friday's edition of Locked On Mizzou if you want to follow along. But anyway, Vicky continues here. She says, I visited the Norwegian countries this fall the night Mizzou beat Kansas. I was watching in a public area in Norway. When would this have been when Missouri beat Kansas is my question. But no, regardless, 2 couples approached me and asked me what team I was watching. I explained that it was a college football game in the States. The conversation that continued surprised me. People in Norway follow American college football. I had a very interesting conversation about the SEC teams. They were not Mizzou fans, but promised me that they would follow them this season. What a season for the new fans in Norway. After visiting family in Norway, they confirmed that a lot of Norwegian countries follow American college football. They only have one sport, so once soccer is over, they follow college American football. So there you go. I assume Vicky there must have meant Kansas State after rereading the email there. No big deal. Just wanted to clean that up slightly, but that is really interesting. I was unaware that Norway was a bit of an outpost for college football, and obviously she's talking, hey, team sports there? Yeah, Norwegians are into, skiing, I suppose, that kind of stuff. Ice hockey, hockey's got to be a big one too, but yeah, hockey, hockey, soccer, and maybe college football is number 3 in Norway. Who knew? So it turns out, I guess you can get bandwagon fans even in Norway. So hopefully we do have some Norwegian fans here, perhaps even listening to Locked On Mizzou. That would be pretty fun, wouldn't it? But again, speaking of getting bandwagon fans, well, I got to say, I think I'm all aboard the Missouri gymnastics bandwagon after this Friday. The plan was my wife, my sister-in-law, her boyfriend, and our buddy Blake, we were all going to gather up my girls and head to the gymnastics event against LSU. But you know what happened? Well, we waited a little bit too long. Game time couldn't even help us out in this particular case for last-minute tickets as the duel was sold out. But you know what? That's okay. Just picked up some grub, watched it at home, and had a blast. Quite honestly, just some great television. Not only did it come down to the absolute wire, both teams were obviously some really high-level gymnastics. It's just really good television, So frankly, a bunch of beautiful young ladies jumping around like Michelangelo in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. Yeah, that's pretty compelling visual television, I gotta say. And, even though my wife and my sister-in-law, who are dance instructors, can be a little bit critical of the dance portions of the floor exercises. You know what? This podcaster rather enjoyed the part where the teammates get into it and do the sort of dance part with them. I found that all entertaining. Hey, if they're having a good time, I'm having a good time is how I look at it. So honestly, Armani Celestine and Jocelyn Moore and everybody out there, it was just a heck of a lot of fun to watch. And you know what? You've got a fan for the rest of this season. What a finish. Obviously, Tigers coming out on top. Just a great night for that program, as they probably had more eyeballs than they've had possibly ever. And as I kind of noted last season as well, it really seems like this Friday night SEC gymnastics thing is having a moment. What else is on in terms of sports for the most part this time of year? Obviously, there's usually an NBA game on ESPN or an ESPN doubleheader of pro basketball, sure. But hey, if you're out at the bar, they got 50 TVs. They can't put them all on the basketball game. So throw on gymnastics and your eyes are just drawn there. You get these young ladies who are doing these crazy backflips off of, balance beams and stuff. It's obviously a really fun sport to watch. A lot of people watch it every 4 years in the Olympics. And, while this obviously isn't quite that high of a level for the most part, obviously Suni Lee went to Auburn. There are some exceptions to that, of some of the best in the world still go to college. But, this is still incredibly high-level stuff that people like me and you can't even imagine doing unless Armani Celestine happens to be listening. And if you are, thank you very much. And obviously, thank you all very much, as always, for listening here on Locked On Mizzou. Thanks for telling another true son or daughter all about the show. Tell them to head over to YouTube, Spotify, wherever you get audio podcasts, or just lockedonmizzou.com for that easy link tree. But you know what? Until next time, I am John Miller, and thanks as always for listening to Locked On Mizzou.